what the difference is between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is you don't put it in a fruit salad. You know, scripture says that God uses the foolish things of the world to confound the wise. And we're the foolish people in the world, and God uses us. My sobriety date is January 21st, 1968. And rather than give you a long, I'm not going to give you a drunk-a-log to begin with. I started at 7, I drank until I was 23, and by that time I was ready to die. I want to tell you about all the miracles that God has wrought in my life in the last 56 years. You know, I come to a lot of speaker meetings. In fact, that's what they had when I first came in, was speaker meetings. And people tell you their story. They tell you, well, let's see, for the first, I think, 10 years, we hear a half-hour drunk-a-log and a half hour about what it's like today. But I've eliminated the drunk-a-log because we all know how to do that. That's what they told me when I came in. They said you need to sit down, shut up, take the cotton out of your mouth, out of your ears, and stick it in your mouth. Because if you want what we have, you need to sit down, shut up, and listen. Because the only thing that you can tell us at this point is how to get drunk. If you don't want what we have, don't let the door hit you in the butt on the way out. Only they didn't talk quite that nice. Neither did I at that point. And I thought that meant if I left, I couldn't come back. And so I was afraid that this wouldn't work. Back when I came in, which was before styrofoam, this was a secret society. There were no where and whens. The cop on the corner couldn't tell you where there was an AA meeting unless he was an alcoholic and in AA. Somebody had to see you actively drinking and bring you to your first meeting. I was fortunate enough to be drunk in a Eagles Club, and Red Skelton came in, and I had seen him in there a couple of other times. This time he came over to the table where I was sitting and he offered to buy me a drink. Okay. And then he said, you're too young and you're too pretty to waste your life like this. I know some people that can help you to get sober and stay sober. And I had just been praying the night before to a God that I wanted nothing to do with to help me get out of this because I couldn't live like this anymore. And I said, okay. And the next day, he sent 2 guys to pick me up at my house and take me to my first AA meeting. Now, I know you girls all hear about girls stay with the girls and guys stay with the guys. Well, I came in, there were 25 guys and no girls. So if I hadn't allowed men to tell me what to do, I wouldn't be here today. I got corrected at a meeting the other day because one of my favorite sayings is, if you get a hug every day, you won't find it necessary to drink. Well, somebody interpreted that as, we can't be telling girls to go get hugs from guys, and we can't be telling guys to go get hugs from girls. That wasn't what I said. All I said was, if you get a hug every day, you won't find it necessary to drink. That's what they told me. And the only thing I can tell you is what I was told when I first came in. So that's my story about how I got here. Now, it's been a long time. I started out in California. I lived in California for 2 years. I went to 3 meetings a day. They weren't like today. They were an hour and a half meeting. We say the Lord's Prayer here at the beginning of the meeting. At other meetings, they say it at the end of the meeting. They told me I shouldn't say that prayer unless I knew what it meant. And them 25 guys spent 2 meetings, that's 3 hours, teaching me what that prayer means. And the most important thing I got out of that was, if I don't forgive other people, God won't forgive me. It wasn't a maybe or it might. That prayer that you guys just prayed a few minutes ago says for God to forgive you the way you forgive other people. So that was the most important thing I learned, was forgiveness. When I first came in, the second day, they taught me how to make coffee. They used to have a line of tables and there was 25 guys sitting around the table. Coffee creamer and sugar was in the middle of the tables going all the way down. My job, make a pot of coffee, walk around the table and fill everybody's cup. Now, we didn't have styrofoam, we had china cups and saucers. I had to pour coffee in everybody's cup. Then while another pot was brewing, I emptied the ashtrays. Because they told me what I needed to do was listen when I first came in. That was what was important, that I listen. And they said, you can listen while you pour coffee. I thought they wanted a waitress. Because I didn't think this program worked. I was sure it wouldn't work. But I decided I'm going to do everything they tell me to do. And then when I go back out and get drunk, it won't be my fault, it'll be their fault. Because I did everything they said. Well, let me tell you something, 56 years later, I stand here, and I never found it necessary to go back out and drink. The 3rd or 4th day is when they told me if I got a hug every day, I wouldn't find it necessary to drink. Took 30 years, and at 30 years, I was in a meeting here in Florida, and somebody said something, and it made me realize why that works. In order to get a hug, I gotta go to a meeting. If I'm going to a meeting every day, chances are I'm not gonna drink. And I was doing 3 meetings a day, so there was they weren't giving me any time to drink. By the time they brought me home, the bars were closed, because from the last meeting, we went out for coffee, and it was midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning before they brought me home. But they kept me sober. They said, you just do what we tell you to do. Before I get into the miracles, the first week, they gave me 2 boxes. They gave me one like this, and in this box are the principles behind the steps, the 9 ingredients of love that we read from 1 Corinthians, and the fruit of the Spirit that comes from Ephesians. And they told me to pick one every day. They didn't give me a big book. They said, pick one every day and practice it. Today I picked hope. You know, God is good. It just happened that way. But that was one box that they gave me. The other box was similar to this, only it was made out of cardboard, and it didn't have a hole in it. And they told me I was to put my resentments in it. I didn't know what a resentment was. But then they told me anytime there was something that I couldn't resolve myself, I should write it on paper and put it in here. I said, okay, that ain't very hard. So I started doing that. One day, I used to carry this box with me everywhere I went. It went with me. And one day I'm at a meeting, and I open it up, and I take a piece of paper out, and I read it, and I put it in my pocket. Well, my sponsor saw me do that, and he said, what did you do? I said, well, this higher power that you're talking about isn't doing it quick enough. So I took it out because I'm going to do it myself. And he said, well, put it back in. and give me the box. And they went and they taped the box shut. And they put a hole in the top of it. They said the reason for this box is to teach you that when you can't handle something, you turn it over to your higher power. And then it's not yours anymore. You can't take it back. You don't have to worry about it anymore. God will deal with it in His time. And over the years, I found that out. Everything I put in my box at one time or another ends up getting taken care of. A lot of times it's because I change, not the person that I had a problem with. So today when I make these boxes, they come with a hole and they're already glued shut. Because that saves you one step. You know, Scripture says the wise man learns by other people's mistakes. The fool has to make the mistakes themselves. So I thought, well, I want everybody to be wise. I'll glue the box shut and that'll take care of one step. And this box says, "Good morning, I am God. Today I will be handling all of your problems. Please remember that I do not need your help. If life happens to deliver a situation that you cannot handle, do not attempt to resolve it. Please put it in the SFJTD, something for Jesus to do box. It will be addressed in my time, not yours. Once the matter is placed into the box, do not hold on to it or attempt to remove it. Holding on or removing will delay the resolution of your problem. If it is a situation that you think you are capable of handling, please consult me in prayer to be sure that it is a proper resolution. Because I do not sleep, nor do I slumber, there is no need for you to lose any sleep. Rest, my child. If you need to contact me, I am only a prayer away. My blessings." These two boxes have saved my life. It's 56 years, I pull a principle every single day and practice it. I have sponsees. They all pick a principle and they practice it. And they text me what their principle is, and in turn I text them what principle I'm practicing, so we can help each other when we get some of the harder principles to practice in our lives. All right, now I told you I was going to tell you about the miracles. You know, when I started thinking about this morning and started writing, I ended up with like 6 cards, and I'd only had like just a little part of a sentence to remind me what it was that God did. And I was like, man, I'm gonna need about 4 hours to be able to tell them all these things. When I was 2 years sober, I moved home, back to Massachusetts. I continued to go to meetings. I got married. I already had a child. I had another child. Then I was in a church, and some guy prophesied I was pregnant. He prophesied that I was going to have twins. Well, the ultrasound said I was only having one baby. And I did. And his name was Samuel. And so everybody started saying this man was a false prophet. And he kept saying, God showed me 2 babies face to face. 10 months later, I had a little girl. They're called Irish twins. They were both born the same year. God was not wasting His words. He actually gave me twins. And they're the same age for 2 or 3 months out of the year. And they fight all the time. I have great-grandchildren that are twins. God has just blessed me so much. Back then, I was working in the insurance business. I had an insurance office. I was partners with another guy. And just after the first of the year, he absconded with all the money. He took like 50 grand that was supposed to go into the bank, and he fled. And so the state of Massachusetts said I was now responsible for this 50 grand and to take care of these people, which I tried to do. And one day, a man came into the office. He told me that God sent him, and he needed insurance. And he told me, you should stop by the house so that you can see the house that you're gonna have to insure. And I said, okay, and I stopped by their house that evening at the time he told me to, and they were having a Bible study, so he said, come on into the Bible study, and then we'll talk after. Well, it turned out that this place was Prodigal House Mission Church, and it was a drug and alcohol rehab, and they used all the principles of AA. They used the 12 steps, and I moved in. He sent some girls to work in the office with me until finally I couldn't take it anymore. I was like, I don't care, they can put me in jail, do whatever they want. I can't do this anymore, and we locked the door. And they took me to court, and they suspended my insurance license for 6 months. I had one of the girls as was my lawyer. She wasn't really a lawyer, but she pleaded my case. That was another miracle, because they should have put me in jail or something. I should have been responsible for $50,000. And they just said, it wasn't your fault. You're still here. You tried to do this. I said, thank you, Jesus. I stayed at that house for 2 years. I was the secretary and I was a alcohol counselor. We had 250 kids that went through that program. They stayed there for 6 months. God was so good. I had miracles happen while I was there. There were these 2 boys. One had 6 counts of selling cocaine to an undercover officer, and this other guy had 1 count of selling pot to a police officer. So I was the chosen person to go to court with them that day, and the kid that had that charge for the pot, he had decided that he wanted to come into our program because it was better than going to jail. The other kid came into the program because he was really trying to stop his habit. So we go to court, same judge, same day, one right after the other. The guy with 6 counts, they probated him to Prodigal House for 6 months. And we thought, wow, this is great. The other kid ought to get out with nothing. The other kid went to jail for a year. Because you know what? God doesn't look at our outside appearance. God looks at what's inside in our hearts. And I learned that a long, long time ago. That kid that had the 6 counts today, he's still clean and sober. He's a pastor of a church up in northern New Hampshire. He loved the Lord. Still goes to AA meetings. That was a miracle. That shouldn't have happened. That's not the way this world works. But you know what? God doesn't work the way this world works. God does things different. My ex-husband got arrested for molesting my daughter, so that was the end of him. He was gone. That left me with 5 kids to support. I was making $200 a week working in a shoe shop, and everything that had happened, I had a nervous breakdown. And I ended up in the hospital, and the doctor said I needed to go on disability. He said, you can't work, you need to stay home. I thought, well, there's no way I can do this. So family helped out a little bit. I had applied to Children and Family to pay the rent because the rent was getting behind. We got food stamps, so that took care of food. One of the kids was my nephew, and he was working at a supermarket as bag boy, and he was turning in his pay, which was helping with a little bit, but not much. So we were, to say the least, destitute. And in the middle of all this, my darling son Jonathan, who was my oldest boy, he was 16 at the time, he said, "Mom, can I go to Canada with my friends for the weekend? We're gonna go skateboarding." I knew all his friends. They used to hang out at the house, so I knew that they weren't into drugs or anything like that. And I was like, "Well, yeah, do you have to have money?" He said, I need $100. I said, "Well, you know what I taught you. Go in your room and ask God for it, and if God gives you the $100, you can go skateboarding." He said, "Okay, Mom." And he went in his room, he shut the door. A little while later, he was packing his suitcase. This was like on a Wednesday, they were leaving like Friday. Thursday night, the director of Prodigal House, his wife, I hadn't seen her in a couple of years, she came to visit. She says to me, she gave me an envelope, she said, "God told me to give you this, that you would know what to do with it." Okay, now we're destitute. I said, okay, and I set it on the table, and we visited, and then she left. And I picked it up, and I opened it up, and in the envelope were 5 $20 bills. Now, I have a decision to make. We're destitute. Here's $100. God probably gave it to us to go out and buy food, right? No. I knew that God had given that $100 to Jonathan because he not only prayed, but he knew God would answer his prayer. So he had already packed his bag. And when he came in, I gave him the $100. I said, Rita was here. She said God gave her this and told her that I would know who it was for. I said, it's exactly $100, so that's what you asked for. He thanked God for that. That was a miracle. But the bigger miracle was the very next day, Children and Families sent me a check to pay the back rent. And I went to the bank because I had written out a check to pay the electric bill, and I checked my checkbook and I said it's going to be a few dollars short. I knew they would cover it, but I didn't want to have to pay extra. So I went to the bank to put $20 in the bank so that I could cover that check. And our bank gives you a receipt that tells you what your balance is. And so they give me the receipt, and I expect it's going to say like $23 or something like that. And I look at it and it says $10,023. And I'm like, yeah. Somebody made a mistake. Said to the bank teller, somebody put $10,000 in my account and I know it's not ours. And she said, wait a minute, let me check it out. And so she went and she checked it out, and she came back and she said, were you waiting for something from Social Security disability? I was like, yeah, but everybody told me it takes 2 years, and this is only 6 months. She said, well, that's the check from disability. The next day I got a letter in the mail confirming the fact that they had sent $10,000, and it was back pay from disability for the back 6 months plus what each one of the kids was entitled to, and it came out to like $10,000. You know, God. Had I kept that $100, I doubt I would have got either check. At least not right then. Because when we ask God for something and He gives it to us, we can't turn around and say, well, yeah, well, I need it over here. You know, you can't have it. It doesn't matter what you were praying for. God gave it to me. But because I was faithful and I did what I was supposed to do, we were able to take that $10,000, pay back all the family that had, you know, given money to us, paid all the bills, and we were all set. Then I get a call from my brother, and he says, sis, you need to move to Florida. because mom and dad are getting older and you need to take care of them, and you're the only one that's not married right now. So now my 2 boys are on their own. One of my daughters is already, she was older than them, so she was already off doing her own thing. And then the adopted daughter was in school. And I decided that because my ex-husband wasn't in jail at the time, the best thing to do was to take my daughter and come to Florida. So that's what we did. We packed up all our stuff, got in the car, drove to Florida, pulled into my brother's house. He said, I think I found you guys an apartment. Within 24 hours, we had an apartment, we had the electric turned on, the telephone was turned on. We needed to ship furniture from up north down here. My daughter had gotten on the phone. Now tell me this isn't God. You guys know how much it costs to bring 5 rooms of furniture from Massachusetts to Florida? She convinced these people to bring all our stuff. They had room in the middle of a load for $450. All of our stuff was brought down here. It arrived 10 minutes before we did at my brother's house, so we were able to tell them to just, could they take it over to the apartment, and they did. Again, this is God. I mean, everything just fell right into place, exactly the way it was supposed to be. I was here a week and I called the Rebos on the phone and asked, because I lived in Kansas City, how far away were they? They said they were 1 mile right up the street on the, right up the street from where you live. So I walked in there and there was a bunch of guys playing cards when I walked in. And I said to them, is this where you come if you want to get sober? And they were like, go in that room over there, he says, and see the lady behind the coffee bar. She'll take care of you. That was Annie Mancini. And before I left there, I had been to a meeting. I had joined a group. I had joined Rebos. God had just laid everything out. So now I'm coming to meetings at Rebos. And I go home, and we have been here for, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks. And my daughter, my lovely Naomi, yes, she came home with a 4-day-old baby. Hey, Mom, look what I brought you. Okay?
Loves babies.
I love babies. A 4-day-old little black baby. And she said, her mom doesn't want her because she's a crack baby and all she does is cry. So I told her you would take her. We did. We opened up our house to her. We had her for 19 months until they found her father, who was living with his mother, and they were able to take her. She came to meetings with me. She sat right up front in her little car seat. Everybody loved her. There was another baby, Jessica, that had been kidnapped. Somebody called the FBI and told them that this was baby Jessica. So we had the FBI at our door. Luckily, Kayla didn't have the same birthmark that the other baby did, and she was a crack baby, so she was late. This other baby was crawling all around. She was 9 months old and she could barely sit up. But God was good. In fact, her sister, her mother got pregnant again, tested positive in the hospital for cocaine. Children and family called and said, we have Kayla's sister. They're just being discharged from the hospital. She's 24 hours old. Can you take her too until we can place her? I was like, yeah, sure. So now I got 2 babies. And God just always supplied everything that we needed. He took care of everything. I mean, if I had to tell you every single miracle that God did in my life in the last 50, 60 years, we would probably be here till sometime tomorrow. And if I could keep remembering them, they would still be there, because He has just done so much for me. I'm trying to see if there's something here that I forgot to tell you.
Probably.
Probably is. When I get home, I'll think of it. But you know, today, I put cards on the tables here that have Bible verses on them, and the one that was in front of the place, I didn't see what I put where, but I sat down at the seat there, and the one that was there was one of my favorites. It said, "Train a child in the way he should go when he is young, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." I have 5 kids. I just recently, I sit next to my daughter in church on Sunday. She just recently got baptized. She just recently got married. We go to church every Sunday together. My adopted daughter, I gave her a principal box. Every day she texts me what principal she picked. And she thought it was such a good idea, she made one for her biological sister, who texts her every day which one she picked. So you know, this is a program where we pay it forward. And you can't imagine how paying something forward every day spreads out until it's somewhere else in the world, and you have no idea how it got there. They told me I needed to do 3 good deeds every day and not get caught. Well, I tell that to my sponsees. So there's 5 more people that are doing 3 good deeds every day. And then they sponsor people that are doing 3 good deeds every day. It just spreads like wildfire. This program, it has so many facets to it. Our higher power is the God of our understanding. But I always tell people, I don't care who your God is, but please pick somebody that when you are at your lowest and you need it the most, you pick somebody that can help you. Because if you think a light bulb can help you, I highly doubt that it can. I had a good friend, and his sponsor told him, "Don't come back until you find a higher power." And he came back the next day and he said, "I got a higher power, his name is George. He's a palm tree on Sunset Beach." And I didn't think that was the greatest higher power. But you know what? Not too much later than that, the man came down with cancer. And he found a higher power that he could actually rely on. And that's what happens with all of us. When my mom died, the first thing I did was go to a meeting. And all my friends, they were there. They were able to lift me up. I had to leave to go to Massachusetts for the funeral, and they called me every day. I would get 10, 15 calls every day. Plus they called people that they knew that I knew in the program in Massachusetts and New Hampshire, and they got in touch with me while I was up there. So I had all this network. I have a network that stretches from California all the way up to Maine and all the way down to Florida and Texas. I've been to all these places and I know people in all these places, and they're all in this program. And we all believe the same thing. We all believe in a higher power. And it's so important that we depend on that higher power, because he's the one that keeps us sober, not anything we do. I have today, I've been in this program for 56 years, but I only have today. I cannot stay sober on what I did yesterday or last week. I only can stay sober today on what I do today. And that's what's important. And what I do today is I have to always remember that forgiveness needs to be the most important thing in my life. That I don't have anyone that I'm not friends with or that I don't love I don't have to like everybody, but I have to love everybody, because that's what I learned in this program. And so therefore I have to be willing to forgive. My daughter forgave my ex-husband. So did I. Because you know what, if we didn't, we couldn't break the chain. And then she would have a child and her child would be molested. I had been molested and nobody broke the chain. But when my daughter got molested, I knew because of this program that the chain had to be broken. And it was. It wasn't a geographical cure to come here. I knew we had to come here so that she could get well. And once she got well, she was able to forgive him. But it was because of the principles of this program, because my kids were picking principles when they were, 5 and 6 years old. They were old enough to know what it meant. They picked it out of a box, and that's what they practiced. My kids used to practice playing church. It was the strangest thing. The 3 youngest ones are like 2.5 years and 10 months apart. And one of them would be the preacher. They would take turns though. One would be the preacher, and one would be the sick person, and the other one would be the person that's going to anoint the sick person with oil and pray for them. And people used to come to my house and they used to see my kids playing, and they were like, "What are they doing?" I said, "They're reenacting what they see in church," because that's what kids do. They look at us and they see what we do, and that's what they do. So if we're in our disease and we're out drinking, that's what our kids see. They think that that's normal. So it's important for us that our kids are brought up in this program with us. They're brought up right along with us. My daughter, when she was 3, was coming to meetings with me when I first got into the program. And she used to sit there and color. And she was happy to do that. People used to go sit and color with her. It was really funny. You'd see these 2 old guys, they're like 60 years old, and they're sitting there coloring with a 3-year-old in the corner, so Mom can hear what's going on at the meeting. Today you go to a meeting, and if some little kid starts crying, everybody gets upset, and you're like, "Get that kid out of here." That's not what we should do. Somebody should go get the kid and leave the mother to stay at the meeting because they really need it. That's why they're there with their kids. So these are things you need to think about when you're at a meeting and something like that happens. Some little kid starts to act up. Go say to the mother, "Can I take him over in the corner and color with him or something while you're sitting here listening?" Because you might be saving somebody's life. These are things I learned in this program. And they're the things that I try to practice on a daily basis. I have 3 of my sponsees here today. And I always tell them I can't tell you anything different than what they taught me. Because no matter how dumb it was what they told me, it kept me sober. And that's the only thing I can give to anybody else, is what was given to me. I can't give you Joan's program or Lisa's program or Terry's program. I only can give you what was given to me. And they told me, once you have 30 years, you can dress any way you want, and you can say anything you want, and nobody will question you. An old timer told me that. Here in Florida. So, to end this, I always end it the same way. Janet reminded me, she said, "You have to tell the bird story, because I only tell it once a year on my anniversary." And it's been so long that I need the paper to read it. It says, "If you are unhappy, once upon a time there was a non-conforming sparrow who decided not to fly south for the winter. However, soon the weather turned so cold that he reluctantly started to fly south. In a short time, ice began to form on his wings, and he fell to earth in a barnyard, almost frozen. A cow passed by and crapped on the little sparrow. The sparrow thought, this is the end. But the manure warmed him and defrosted his wings. Warm and happy, able to breathe, he started to sing. Just then a large cat came by, hearing the chirping, investigated the sounds. The cat cleared away the manure, found the chirping bird, and promptly ate him. The moral of the story is, everyone who shits on you is not necessarily your enemy. And everyone who gets you out of shit is not necessarily your friend. And if you are warm and happy in a pile of shit, keep your mouth shut. I can't help it, we're just a bunch of crazy people. And I thank you all for my sobriety.
Thank you, Hope.
Thank you.